You're pretty sure you're dead. And the funny thing is, you don't even mind that much. Somewhere far, far away, you think you can hear an angel calling your name. Your angel sounds kind of worried. It's Loki, you realize, and you smile. Maybe more like a demon then. When you open your eyes, he's right there in front of you, his irises a deep crimson.
Did you faint?
You twine your arms around his neck, wondering why in the world he seems so freaked out, while you feel like you're floating. If I did, it was worth it. Loki's hand wraps around the base of your neck, and you shudder and curve against him, the need buzzing across your skin, instantly flaring back to full force. He's searching your face, and you're struck with the sudden, sure realization that the emotion in his eyes is guilt.
Forgive me. Forgive me for what I...
Cutting him off with a kiss seems like a pretty solid idea in your current state of post-euphoric bliss. And so, that's what you do. His grip on your neck tightens, and if you were a little more aware, you might be embarrassed by the sound that you make in response. God, he tastes so good. God, he feels good. That's currently the only thing going on inside your head. You feel turmoil building inside of you, though, and since it sure as hell isn't yours, it's got to be his. The whole noble thing is starting to wear your patience thin, and driven solely by the overwhelming need to make him feel just as desperate as you reach down and shamelessly grope him. Loki hisses against your lips and jerks slightly, and it's almost like it gives you some sort of strange confidence, this power over him, driving you onward. Let me touch you, you whisper, tugging at the waist of his pants. You can't figure out how to unfasten them one-handed, and it's painfully frustrating. You're starting to feel almost vicious. I'm Loki's woman, remember? The noise that escapes his throat, then, is more akin to a whine. Your blood burns, exultant. Please, Loki. He rolls onto his back with no further prompting, grabbing your hand and pressing it against himself. For a second, you hesitate. What now? Some part of you wonders, but a much louder part screams for you to figure it out as you go. Getting him out of his pants seems like a good start. Loki's eyes are wild, and you run your fingers down his bare chest as you lean over him, watching in fascination as his muscles tense and ripple. Beautiful, you think. Mine. Asgardian pants have way too many buttons, and by the time your trembling fingers manage to unfasten them, you're pretty sure you're both about to die of anticipation. He's hot and heavy in your hand, and his head falls back against the pillows, eyes wide.
Kiss me. Just kiss me, please.
He says, fisting his hand in your hair. With that kind of begging, how could you possibly refuse? His hand wraps around yours, guiding you. He groans again as your tongue delves into his mouth, and you hook your leg around his, desperate for more contact.
So warm.
He whispers, nipping your chin, your neck. Loki rolls his hips, his breathing becoming increasingly ragged, his brow furrowed in concentration. You cry out when he does, so caught up in the excitement and the feeling of it that it takes a moment for you to realize what you've done, and Loki is peppering kisses down your cheek as he crushes you to his chest, muscles trembling. Was that good? You ask after a moment or two of breathless exhilaration, pushing yourself up onto your elbow. You don't know why you feel so anxious, considering the extremely satisfied, slightly dazed look in Loki's eyes, but this is the furthest you've ever gone with someone before, and you aren't entirely certain if your enthusiasm is enough to make up for your lack of experience. Loki manages a strangled sort of laugh, his forearm resting over his eyes.
Could you not tell?
Well...
It was wonderful.
He interrupts, pulling you back down against his shoulder as he yawns.
You taste like fire, mortal.
Flustered, you pull away slightly, even though curling up at his side and passing out is pretty damn tempting. I'm gonna go to the bathroom, okay? I'll be right back. He frowns, but his eyes are closed, and he only lets out a little annoyed hum when you push away the covers and scamper off to his bathroom, pulling the shoulder of your gown up as you go. Not that that really matters at this point, you think. You lean over the marble countertop, twisting your head to try to get the best view of your neck. There's a ring of reddened teeth marks impressed into your skin, just below your collar. When you run your fingers over them, you shudder, but the sting of it isn't exactly unpleasant, but strange. It doesn't look like Loki's, will it? Or did it not work on me because I'm not a Jotun? Somehow, the idea that you might not be permanently pair-bonded with your crazy sorcerer king leaves you feeling a little crestfallen. You wash up a bit, but the bed is calling you, and you're soon crawling back under the sheets. Loki looks like he's asleep, but he wraps his arm around your waist and drags you closer to him as soon as you've laid down, and your heart flutters. This is it, you realize. This is what it feels like to fall in love. There's no expression whatsoever on Loki's face the next morning, and the little bloom of hope that had begun to kindle in your chest during the night immediately wavers. He's leaning over you, but he won't meet your eyes, and he practically winces as he smooths his fingers over the tender skin of your neck.
Does it hurt?
No. You twine your fingers with his, hoping that it will somehow reassure him. Does yours?
It would be much easier if it did.
It's easy to see where this is going. Loki,
I do not blame you. That is not... I do not want you to think that I'm angry with you.
sighing, you pull his hand away from your neck. But
I don't think you've considered the ramifications of this entire affair.
Loki gestures between the two of you helplessly, and you recoil a little at the fact that he calls it an affair. He notices.
That is not what I...
Look, I'm kind of new to all of this, and you aren't exactly helping. Besides, I feel like it's a little late for regrets, isn't it? Unless you know how to make all of this go away. His lips part as he stares at the mark on your neck, seemingly transfixed, longing. He shakes his head. Yeah, that's what I thought. Sorry, sire, but I guess you're stuck with me. You're starting to tear up. Shoving the sheets aside, you try to scramble out of bed, the long gown twisting and tangling around your legs. Loki catches you and drags you backwards, his arms wrapped around your waist. Great, just where I want to be right now, in this idiot's lap.
What did you mean? That you are new to this?
His mouth is right by your ear, his cheeks pressed against your hair. Really, if he's trying to discourage you, holding you in his lap and whispering in your ear is probably the worst possible way to go about it. We've already covered the fact that there's no boyfriend on Midgard, remember? Like, we had that discussion weeks ago, and I've definitely never had some kind of magical bond with someone before. He's getting turned on. You can feel it. He's hard beneath you, and his grip has tightened ever so slightly. At least he responds to possessiveness, if nothing else.
It's true, but I did not realize...
Either kiss me or let me go. Your breath hitches in anticipation as you feel his lips move towards your neck. But then his grip slackens, and Loki leans away.
We haven't the time to discuss this now. It'll have to wait until we return to Utgard with the casket.
Wonderful. More waiting. More avoiding the issue. Yeah, well, you've got centuries to wait, Loki. I don't. You say, pulling loose from his arms and making your way towards the bathroom. There's an unsettling flicker of panic in your chest as you push open the door, but you try your best to ignore it. It isn't yours. An hour later, you're carrying a bucket and rags down the gilded palace hallways, wincing every time you manage to jostle water out onto the pristine stone floor.
Oh, Nons, was it too much to hope that you might make a convincing cleaning girl at the very least? You're practically leaving a trail of puddles.
You could help. You huff, resolving to smother him in his sleep the next chance you get. Who knew being an old-timey palace servant would require so much muscle?
No. It would look very strange. I would not want to risk compromising our cover.
Typical. At least the anxiety that comes along with trying to rob the guy who's known as King of the Gods distracts away from some of your messier feelings, and Loki's too. Because to say that his feelings are a mess would be a massive understatement. Loki keeps walking down the hallway after subtly directing you towards the ornately engraved column you're supposed to pretend to scrub. The halls are relatively busy, even here in the depths of the palace, so you guess you must not seem too out of place. The armored guards by the door don't really seem like they even notice you. Oh god, I hope Loki doesn't kill them. You think, your stomach suddenly twisting. You aren't ready to become an accessory to murder, giant monster wolves aside. And that just reminds you, once again, that you're pretty sure you're falling in love with the guy who once led an alien army to Earth, which doesn't exactly help your nerves. I am so royally screwed. Except, you aren't royally screwed. That's kind of the problem. You dip your cloth into the bucket and wring out the excess water, your knees already aching from the hard stone floor. This job would totally suck. Maybe being a royal pet isn't such a bad gig after all. As it turns out, even godly palaces have dust, and that dust seems to really like to accumulate in the little nooks and crannies in the column's engravings. If things go well, then your only job will be to stay put and make sure the entire Asgardian army isn't rushing towards the vaults to skewer the wayward prince. If things go badly, well, there really isn't much of a plan for that, except to grab Loki and run. You nearly knock over the bucket in surprise when someone taps on your shoulder, and you twist around to find a tan, fair-haired boy standing behind you, a broom in his hand. Seems kind of young to be working, you think, but then you realize that he's probably at least a couple centuries older than you are.
Pardon me, miss, but Engager says that we were all to gather in the meeting hall by the kitchens. There is to be a feast when the prince arrives, and she'll be assigning our duties for those of us who are new to the palace.
Prince? That has to be Thor. Thank God that this kid's apparently new too, or he might notice that you don't exactly belong. Thank you, you reply, channeling your best high school Shakespeare vibes. You bob your head. Are you supposed to bow? Curtsy? Does this kid outrank you? He stands there, slightly perplexed.
Are you not coming?
I would like to finish this column, as I'm behind on my work. That's a decent excuse, right? The boy nods.
Very well, but you'd best hurry. Engager sounds to be in a mood.
Your heart starts beating again as he turns and heads down the hall, his broom slung across his shoulder. Nice work. That's some good espionage right there. You congratulate yourself. The hall empties out after a few minutes, save for you and the guards. Loki said that he timed it so that everyone would be heading to the main hall for the morning meal, and you're honestly a little surprised that this whole crazy plan seems like it might actually have a chance of working. You continue to scrub, your heart in your throat, and when a lone soldier strides down the hall towards you, you nearly faint. But then you realize, despite the disguise he didn't warn you about, you can still tell that it's Loki. Apparently, being mate bonded with a shapeshifter has its perks. At least he'll have a hard time sneaking up on you. Don't stare. It'll look suspicious. Do I look suspicious? Oh my god. From the corner of your eye, you watch as he approaches the guards and says something to them. He's too far away for you to make out his words, but even his voice sounds different, and it's super weird. One of the guards shrugs and says something back to him, and they both head off down the hallway, passing right behind you. You keep your eyes fixed on the column. Can Loki feel how terrified you are? You hope it isn't too distracting. A few minutes later, the guard returns alone. Except it isn't the guard. It's definitely Loki. You hope that the original guard isn't dead in the closet somewhere. But, knowing Loki... When he reaches the vault door, he must make some sort of joke, because the other guard laughs loudly and claps him on the shoulder. Loki returns the gesture, and there's a sudden cracking sound. You jump and turn to look, and the second soldier is frozen solid. Is he dead? You whisper, horrified.
No, though I can't imagine this feels pleasant. Help me with the door.
He replies briskly, shouldering one of the doors open. Crap. You scurry to his side, struggling to prop the door open as he drags the other guard inside the vault, carelessly propping him against the wall. The guard's eyes are wide open, and you try not to meet them. You really hope that he can't actually see you. You wonder if Loki is feeling guilty, or if that's just you.
Go back to your post. Keep watch for any soldiers. If anyone seems to notice something is amiss, raise a commotion.
Okay. Great plan, Loki. Hurrying back into the hall, you almost shriek when you pass through the golden image of one of the guards, which suddenly shimmers to life in front of the door.
Quickly!
Loki snaps, and the door shuts behind you. Deep breaths, you tell yourself. You're just an innocent servant girl, minding her own business. Just act natural. This is totally normal. Nothing to see here, folks. But your hand shakes as you retrieve the rag from your bucket, and you expect at any moment that someone is going to come charging down the hall, screaming mortal. Mortal, who is in a weird relationship thing with Loki Laufeyson, the supposed dead prince. Can't imagine that going over well. You feel a sudden bloom of something, burning through your chest and down your arms. You drop the rag in shock as your fingertips tingle. It's almost like the air is knocked out of you, and you sag against the column, suddenly exhausted. That doesn't seem like a good sign. Footsteps echo down the hall, and you heft your bucket and pretend that you're moving to the next column to work, edging closer to the door. The man that passes by has a thin mustache and a friendly smile, and you try to return it, adding in a tiny bow for good measure. Oh, crap, maybe that should have been a curtsy. If you're lucky, maybe people will just assume you're some sort of country bumpkin. Whoever he is, the man disappears around the corner at the end of the hall, and the door to the vault cracks open only a moment later. Loki's head peeks out, still disguised as one of the guards, and as he steps into the hallway, his form shimmers and shifts into the servant that he'd been when you first arrived at the palace. The illusion guards shift their weight, but otherwise remain motionless. It's highly unsettling.
Come, we must move with all possible haste.
Loki says, snagging your arm and dragging you away from your bucket. Did you get it? He better have it after all of this stress, but you don't see anything.
Yes. It is stored away for now. Heimdall will likely notice that it is gone soon, but he should not be able to use its power to track us.
His voice is clipped, and you can feel his tension bubbling close to the surface. In one of your magic pockets? I thought they were hard to open.
They are, and the odds of no one noticing that sudden pulse of power are slim.
He pulls you into an alcove behind a silver-plated statue, raising a finger to his lips when you begin to ask another question. A conversation passes by somewhere around the corner, and Loki nods for you to continue. Is that why it felt like somebody punched me in the gut? Because a warning might have been nice for future reference.
It did. That is unexpected.
Well, that's just great.
Mind your tone, mortal. We'll worry over that later. Slipping out of the city unnoticed is the most precarious part of this entire operation.
More things to worry about later. It's really gonna suck when later comes. Moving more quietly than you'd think possible for a man his size, Loki slips around the far side of the statue and pulls you from the shadows, guiding you down a narrow staircase that looks like it isn't used very often. At least you're getting some more quality hand-holding in, so that's something positive to focus on, instead of the fact that you could get caught and tossed into an alien prison at any second. The two of you hurry down a mostly empty hallway, and then you turn a corner and you're suddenly in a very crowded courtyard, the spires and towers of the palace rising around it, caging you in. This isn't the way we came, is it?
No. Never leave the same way you came. There's another lesson for you, girl.
People here are tall. Not relative to actual giants, maybe, but they're still kind of impressive. They're all pretty fit, too. Yet another planet where the average person could crush you like a grape. There's a loud boom just as you reach the gate to the street outside, and chaos erupts. People shrieking and running towards the palace. A lady with a basket nearly knocks you over, and you plaster yourself to Loki's side. What the hell was that?
Diversion. This path is a bit more noticeable, and we won't have as much time to move at our leisure.
Were we seriously moving at what you call a leisurely pace on the way here? You think, clutching his hand more tightly. The street twists and narrows by a low stone wall, and after checking to make sure the coast is clear, Loki hoists you over it.
A public garden. The Queen kept a doorway hidden here, leading to the pool where she did her scrying. I doubt that Odin knows that I know of it.
He informs you, as he lands lightly on his feet to the other side. You know, my brain can't process any of this. Just get us back to Utgard in one piece. I'll ask questions later. A smile flickers across his face, gone almost as soon as it appears.
Very well. I am only trying to alleviate your anxiety. I can't feel it, you know.
Oh, believe me, I know. There's a gigantic prickly bush towards the back of the garden, and by the time you reach it, Loki is practically running, dragging you along with him. Oh, hell no, I am not climbing through that.
No hesitation.
Loki declares, and then he shoves you forward. You yelp, and then you gasp, because after a brief fall through cold nothingness, you land in waist-deep water. There's another splash as Loki lands next to you, and you flounder around in darkness until you find him. You ass! You cry, trying to clamber onto his back. Who even knows what kind of god-awful snakes and toothy fish and parasites live in the water here?
Don't be so dramatic. Besides, this path actually requires less magic to navigate, so you should find it easier to handle.
Loki says, but he helps and hoists yourself onto his back anyway. Both of you apparently decide that it's best not to mention the way he tenses when you wrap your arms around his neck. But you're feeling a little bitter, and since you're in a pool anyway, you let your thoughts drift to that one time he cornered you in the bath, the way he looked at you like he wanted to devour you on the spot. This whole bond thing is kind of vague and unpredictable, but maybe he'll get the message. His fingers dig into your thighs.
Wretched little thing. Do not think to distract me.
I'm not doing anything.
Liar.
You guess the "so what are we actually" conversation can wait until you aren't on the run from an army of gods. Loki moves through the cave quickly. You wonder if the fact that he's so freaking heavy helps him keep his footing as the water swirls around you. Bright light shines somewhere in the distance, and you get pretty excited about being out of the dark. But then he suddenly stops.
Hold your breath,
he says, and you barely have a chance to comply before you're completely underwater. At first you panic, but after everything that's happened, drowning doesn't seem quite as intimidating. You live with magical giants after all, and you help defeat a monster wolf. There's definitely a part of you that feels just a tiny bit invincible. Maybe that's how Loki feels. The water is warm until it isn't, and you're freezing by the time your head pops out. Loki?
I know. I do not remember how quickly the temperature changed. I will dry you once we are out of the water.
That sounds fine and dandy, until he actually climbs out of the water, because you're basically back on Jotunheim now, and you're pretty sure that you're going to freeze to death. Your breath fogs in the air, and the thin Asgardian gown clings to your legs, sodden and cold.
Are you attempting to choke me?
Loki asks, prying your arms from around his neck. You deserve it. Trying to kill me. You wince as you slide to the ground, almost surprised that your legs don't just freeze and shatter on impact.
Hardly. I'd be much more efficient about it, if I were.
He takes your hand and hauls you back to your feet, and his magic burns as it chases the chill away from your skin. The travel satchel has miraculously remained waterproof during your underwater adventure, and as soon as the water leaves your skin, you're digging out your layers and putting on as much as you possibly can without completely stripping off your dress. Goodbye, pretty outfit that makes Loki go crazy. You'd probably freeze your butt off if you tried to wear that in his bedroom in Asgard. Loki holds out a hand once you've shrugged on your coat, and as the blue bleeds across his skin, you swear that you almost catch a hint of excitement in his eyes.
I suppose this is it. Let us hope that your twins are waiting to escort us back to the city, and that my subjects remain loyal.
You take it, and your fingers intertwine. And if they aren't?
If they aren't,
He says, a sly smile on his face.
then I suppose we'll just have to unleash our magic on them, won't we?